We've got room, and I've got a microphone that is on now. We've got some room. Yeah, anybody got a seat next to them? Couple seats. Anybody selling their seats on StubHub? Just trying to see what your church spot can go for. Yeah, if we can continue to scoot to the middle. We just have people come in. We're only 16 minutes into the service, and just trust me, from being the guy that's always seeing the doors open, people will walk in until 11:30. So if you'll make space for our friends and not make it awkward for them any more than it already is, and then you can gently remind them at the end of the service what time the service starts. Be awesome. I'm just feeling loose today. Hope you guys are okay with that. This is like, normally I reserve this for 12, but you're getting it early. So welcome. Hey, the last 2 Sundays have been pretty amazing. The last 2 Sundays in Epic Church's entire history of existence, if you don't count any Easters, the last 2 Sundays, April 14th and April 21st, the most amount of people we've ever seen on any Sunday, and it's happened twice in a row. And it looks like with a little added section. How you guys like that added section? Does that work for you? You just come lay, grab some chair. This is really fun. And you may also know that we are in the middle of a construction project for a future home that is going to have more seats, which apparently is necessary. And I got to walk through that future home this past Wednesday. Lots of stuff still is going up. We're going to be more secure, or as secure as any hospital in the city. That's what they've told us. There's a lot of stuff happening, and so you can pray for that. Walk around and pray. You've seen the big signs, Future Home of Epic Church. We believe that within 6 months we'll actually be occupying that space if we get our inspections, if we don't have hiccups with the elevator and all the things. There's a lot on the list. But as our church continues to grow in this season, we are looking to hire 2 positions, and I just wanted to kind of let it out publicly today, and then we'll go for it. We're looking to hire both a groups director and a host team director here at Epic Church. Some of you are like, oh no, I know Lindsay's been the groups director. Where's she going? That girl's not going anywhere. Lindsay has served in a lot of roles, but she's overseen groups from day one, which means that Lindsay, she is in her late 20s, but she's held this role for over 13 years now, which is a lot, over 13 years. And if nobody applies, maybe we'll go for year 14. But we are trying to, I want to free her up to be able to give more of her time, attention, and energy to helping me lead at the highest level in terms of where our church is and where we're going. And so we're looking for someone who can give an inordinate amount of time and attention and energy to overseeing our groups ministry. We're also looking for a host team director as we move into the space, and the complexities are going to increase with 2 entrances, way more parking situations happening, 3.5 floors of that building. So it's just, we got a couple of roles that are massive for a growing church that's entering into a new physical space that's much larger than what we've been in so far. And so would you pray, see if this is maybe something that you want to apply for, but even if not, think about people leaders anywhere they may be around the world, not just in the nation, but around the world, who you think could be a great fit for this season, for this church community and culture, doing leadership and ministry right here in downtown San Francisco. We'd love for you to share that link with them, epicsf.com/jobs. And we're just excited about what God's doing. But I'm sure you know this about yourself. You should surely know this about me. Team matters so much to me. Second to the Holy Spirit, from day one, I believe the importance in what God has done in our church and will continue to do starts with a team and then flows through several hundred volunteers. And so be praying. Even if you're not interested at all, you don't know anyone, would you please pray that we would get this right, because we think it's really significant for where we are as a church in this season. Now, owning what owns you, part 4. I think we all have a vision of what we think the good life consists of. For you, the good life might consist of, if you've been in a season of sickness with a family, your good life might consist of you just all being healthy. For you, the good life might consist of working at a job where there's no drama at the company. Anybody would love to have a job where there's no drama? Come on, everybody, come on. I'm watching all the stories these days. Lots of drama, lots of companies. And for some people, the good life would just look like more regularly going to jazz concerts. Anybody? Jazz concerts, that would be the good life. My wife's hand is up. We need to take note of that. I need somebody to email me about that. I need somebody to buy me. All right. For others of us, like myself, the good life would consist of going on more frequent adventures out in nature. Anybody think like that's the good life? Hands high. Just need to know where my nature people are. Who's loving that sunshine? I know. Yeah, we're in a basement. Some people would love to just have the time, because you think the good life consists in making time and space to prepare a gourmet meal for friends. Anybody? I'm really looking for the gourmet meal preparers. That would be awesome for me to know. Shauna, just take a note. As long as none of the people with their hands up are annoying, let's try to get to their home. But let me ask you this, what is your idea of the good life? And I want to ask 3 specific questions. I'm going to tell you what they are, and then we're going to raise our hands and participate, just have some fun in church. Because you know what pastors do, right? When you have a convicting message to share, that kind of truth, you got to warm the crowd up. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just telling you what I'm doing right now. Conviction is coming. We're just going to have fun right now. Is everybody okay with that? I'm gonna draw you in, and then I'm going to stab your heart. That's where we're going. So here are the 3 questions, and I'll tell you what they are, and then we'll kind of play along out loud. I want you to think about, in your idea of the good life, what time would you be waking up every day in the good life? I want you to be thinking about what would the perfect temperature be in San Francisco in your version of the good life. And then the last question, I'll just be asking, how many of you in the good life would be working mostly in person versus working mostly remote? Okay, so here we go. First question, and we're all participating. It doesn't matter if you're an introvert, an engineer, if you're young or old. You don't do this in the church culture you come from. Welcome to a new church culture. Here we go. So we're asking, what time would you be waking up in the ideal version of life? How many of you would say between 5 and 6 a.m.? No, keep them up, seriously. Yeah, we have a 9 o'clock gathering. That would free up some great seats. How many of you would be between 6 and 7 in your ideal life? 7 to 8? Okay, 8 to 9? 9 to 10? Anyone that in your version of the ideal life would be beyond noon? Anybody? Yeah, that's amazing. So in your version of the best possible life, you're sleeping half the time. That's great. Now that we've established that, let's talk about temperature. How many of you, if you could have just the constant temperature in San Francisco, would want it to be between 50 and 60? So only 2 of us, only 2 of you are happy with 365 days a year. How many between 60 and 70? Yeah. I'm kind of 65 to 75 if I had to just really get it. How many 70 to 80? Wow. 80 to 90. Anybody 90 and above? Well, hey, for those of you 90 and above, we don't want to lose you, but Fresno's much cheaper than San Francisco, and we have an online church thing, and it's a lot more days in the 90s there. And then when it comes to work, how many of you in the best possible version of life would work in person mostly? How many of you would work mostly remotely? Hands up, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. Seriously, keep your hands up. Just don't apply for those epic jobs I mentioned a second ago. We don't have anything for you. We all have a vision of the good life. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm actually calling this message, What is the Good Life? And I want to get real specific. You can probably, whenever you sit on a card that says a 90-day generosity challenge, you probably know where we're headed with what owns us. But here's the question specifically to get us into today's topic that I want to ask you. In your ideal life, do not answer this out loud. In your ideal life, how much money would you be making? Now, because we're not answering out loud, please be honest with yourself. I want you to get a number. Now, whatever your number is, if you're being honest, I'm guessing no one is pretty much exactly what I'm making right now. Anybody? No. I'm willing to, that's amazing, but I kind of know some things about you, so I'm not, this guy and I were in a small group this week. I'm not telling. Your secret's safe here. I'm guessing almost no one, I can guarantee that no one said, you know what, in the ideal life, I would be making a good bit less than I make right now. Anybody? Anybody on Epic Church staff that says that? Because we're trying to free up dollars everywhere we can get it. My guess is if we were being honest answering the question, in your ideal life, how much money would you be making? I'm sure all of us had some version of this word. More. Just a little bit more. Ben, have you seen inflation? Your brother has seen inflation. I'm with you. And same for, we would all be making more. And I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to make more necessarily, but I do want you to know this. As long as your version of the good life is having more money than you have right now, the good life will always be out of reach for you. It doesn't mean life can't get better when we have more. I'm not that guy. But if your version of the good life always involves having something you don't have today, my guess, and I'd be willing to bet, that it will always, until you change postures or until you kind of change some different rhythms and cycles in your life, it will always just be out there because there's always more, right? Anybody remember when you came out of college how much money you told yourself you needed to make? And then you had a child? And then you moved to San Francisco? I know. And it's like, so it's not that more is not ever needed. It's just that if it's always more than I have right now, then that will probably, because there can always be more, and there's always something I don't have. But that can put us in a position where I think we would miss the good life if we keep telling ourselves the good life is somewhere out there. So today, I want to put all my cards on the table. I believe for every man, woman, boy and girl, teenager, whatever country of the 60 nations represented at Epic you're from, I believe that for every one of us, whatever your income tax bracket is, all of the things, I believe 100% that Jesus is inviting every single one of us into the good life. Can we just celebrate that? We believe lies, but he is a good shepherd. He's inviting us into a good life. Psalm 23:1, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing, but we live like we lack everything. He's inviting every one of us into the good life, but he might want to redefine how we think about the good life. So with that in mind, we're in Luke 12 today. You can stand with me. We're going to get into a teaching from Jesus, which, as it usually does, this one includes a parable. And today, we're talking about how greed can own any one of us in the room. And the scary part is that greed is one of those issues we can have in life that's very difficult for us to see. I'm sure nobody woke up thinking, I'm just so greedy. 12:13 through 21. Someone in the crowd said to him is Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." This guy was convinced that he had the best definition of the good life. Jesus wanted to reorient what he thought the good life was. And I think he might want to do the same for me and for you and us collectively as Epic Church. So let's have a seat and figure some things out. Out of the gates, you hear this phrase from Jesus, watch out, watch out, watch out. In other words, you need to be really looking for this. I want you to pay attention to this. And when I gave the first message in this series on April the 7th, I laid out a 4-step process that we just keep going back to. And anything you face in life, I have this much confidence, you can run it through this process. Anything that's owning you in life, whether it's the topic we cover in this series or not, you can run it through this grid. And I promise you, if you engage and embrace it, it will help you out. Here are the 4 steps. Number 1, recognition. Number 2, admission and confession. Number 3, build the necessary structure to get out of that thing that owns you. And then number 4, engage in practices that bring about freedom and spiritual growth. Recognition is the first step. And this is the first thing Jesus says. What does he say? Watch out. Watch out. Watch out. And the reason Jesus says watch out is because he knows this. Most people, you'll see this on the screen, most people do not see greed as an issue in their life. Most people do not see greed as an issue in their life. Now, let me tell you why that's true. There are a lot of sins that if we commit them, we know when we're doing them, right? Let's just think about some of the 10 Commandments. We tend to know when we're lying. We tend to know when we're stealing. In case you don't, anytime you take something that doesn't belong to you, that is stealing. We should know when we're committing adultery. We should know when we're committing murder. Those things are more obvious, aren't they? But greed, it's I don't see a line. Anybody else? And so because I can always see you with more, and you have a strong desire for more stuff than what I have, I assume I'm not greedy, and you are the only one of us that's greedy. Does that make sense? So it's hard to detect. And so what Jesus says is like, hey, you've got to be careful. You got to be on your guard, he says, against all kind of greed. And the reason we really have to be on our guard is because most of us don't think it's an issue for ourselves. But understand this, greed, even if you don't see it, can absolutely own you. Greed, even if you don't see it, can absolutely own you. Greed will cause you to be selfish in your relationships. Greed will cause you to do unethical things at the office just to make the stock price go up. And I believe this is the big sort of like bomb drop to me. Greed, I think, will keep you from following Jesus. And I know it will keep you from becoming like Jesus. It's that potent. It's that powerful. Tim Keller in Counterfeit God said this about greed, really fascinating. He said, Jesus warns people far more about greed than about sex, yet almost no one thinks they are guilty of it. Isn't that crazy that Jesus said so many things about money, about treasure, about possessions, about greed, about generosity? He said way more about that than he said, really, if you combine everything Jesus said about sex, heaven, or hell, he still said more about money, greed, and possessions. The question we should ask, if Jesus, the wisest person to ever live, talked about that more than he talked about all the other stuff, we should ask the question, why? Because he knows that if you get the top part of your heart wrong, what sits on your throne, he knows everything else goes off the rails. And he just knows for the human heart, and this isn't an American thing, though it's alive in America. This isn't just a church thing, though it's alive in the Christian church in the West. This is an every human thing. He knows what tends to compete for top spot with him. And he knows if that gets a grip on my life, he can't have a grip on my life. If that controls me, I'll no longer be under the control of the Spirit. And what we're trying to do here at Epic Church is to see an increasing number of people here in San Francisco orient their entire lives around Jesus. And let me just shoot straight with you. What we're talking about today, a lot of people, they get to this place and they will say, oh, if that's what it means to follow Jesus, I guess I want out. Instead, why don't you ask, if that's what it means to follow Jesus, I wonder what he's trying to teach me that I didn't know before today. Okay? So if greed is something that's hard to detect, we need to know what we're looking for, don't we? One commentator says this, and I think it's a great definition. He says that greed is an insatiable desire and lust for more and more. It is all-consuming, so that all of life becomes focused on the accumulation of wealth. There is no room for anything else, not even God. So everything is just about more wealth, more this, more that. And by the way, I'm giving the greed message in the context of money because that's one that is obvious, but we can be greedy with our time. We can be greedy with our relationships. We can be greedy with our energy. We can be greedy with our wisdom, right? We can be greedy with our benefits that we get that we never want to pass on to anyone else. Like, we can be greedy in a lot of different areas. So just know that I'm going to give that sort of overall piece. Like, you can know that anything that you have in your life, you can actually be greedy with, even as we talk a lot about money today. Now, I want to help us assess whether greed could be something in our hearts. And what's interesting for you to know about greed is you don't have to possess a lot of things to have a greedy heart. You could just have a desire to possess a lot of things, and that would make your heart greedy as well. So actually, I don't have these in the notes on the screen, so let me give you 4 ways you can help diagnose or assess, is there any greed in my heart? Here's the first one. Am I on an endless quest for more? The sort of key word in that question, am I on an endless quest for more, is the word endless. Listen, I am a believer in more. I want to reach more people as the pastor of Epic Church. You good with that? I want more funds to come into our church so we can reach more people. Are you good with that? I want a lot of things more, but if I'm on an endless quest for more, it probably means there could be greed in my heart. So am I on an endless quest for more? Second question, do I have the inability to go without something? Do I have the inability? I'm unable to go without something. I have to have a vacation every 2, whatever. I have to have this device every time it comes out. I have to. I literally am unable to live my life with peace and contentment unless I get that thing. Third diagnostic question. How often am I playing the comparison game and coveting what someone else has? How often am I playing the comparison game and coveting? So I don't just want more. That's the first question. I'm not just unable to go without. I actually want what Joe has. I want what Rachel has. I want what Shauna has. I want what you have. And so now I've set my sights on the thing that you possess, and I can't be happy till I have it, what you have, and then usually till I have more than you have. Fourth question, how tightly do I hold on to what I think is mine? The word think is the one I would highlight there. If you're a follower of Jesus, if not, I guess it's yours. How tightly do I hold on to what I think is mine? Jesus says in the text, before we get into the parable, which we'll do in just a moment, he says that, speaking of the good life, he says, life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. So if we're in a series on ownership and Jesus says, hey, the good life isn't just having a bunch of stuff, here's the question I think we should ask. Do I own my possessions or do my possessions own me? Do I own my possessions or do my possessions own me? Am I enslaved to my possessions? Now again, you know that you can be enslaved to what you own. That's pretty obvious. But do you know you can be enslaved to what you wish you own? Some of you, you're in jobs right now because you thought that dollar figure of the salary in that industry that you're in right now is the only way you can get the thing you want. And so you're miserable and you're missing out on the purpose of God because you told yourself, I can't go be a school teacher because God won't take care of me there because I want this other thing. And you're completely miserable because you're missing out. And your stuff is owning you whether you possess it or you don't possess it but just want to. And I'm not saying there aren't real implications. Trust me. But do you own your possessions? Or can you be free with your stuff, both your desires and your possessions? Freedom looks like this. I thank God for providing for me. I sometimes ask for more, okay? So again, I'm just going to keep saying stuff you might not expect your pastor to say. I ask God for more. I ask God for more. I look at the 4 kids between ages 16 and 20 in my home. I'm like, God, Good Shepherd, Jehovah Jireh. They can either, alternate going a semester, and then you go a semester. And then... So I have no problem asking for more. But can I be open-handed with the more that I'm asking for? Can I be content with what I have today? And because, if you struggle with contentment, my guess is you could simplify why in this way. You struggle with contentment when you always need what you don't have yet, but you have contentment when you are grateful for what you've received so far. So discontentment is I'm always lacking, I'm always not enough, I'm always not having enough, I'm always in debt to my desires. But contentment is like, no, I have enough. I can pray for more, but my contentment's not contingent upon more. God, would you give me? Yes, if it's So Jesus then, after just teaching directly, he starts telling a parable to illustrate the truths he's seeking to communicate. And the first thing he says that stands out to me that I really think people need to hear, especially in a church setting, is this one. There is nothing wrong with receiving an abundant harvest. I know some people in a church, they expect the pastor to go, I can't believe you want that or you have that. There is nothing wrong with receiving an abundant harvest. However you define abundant harvest in the season that you're in, just know that when you receive it, you don't need to feel guilty for it. Can we stop feeling guilty about the gifts that our good God likes to give us? Now, if you earn that abundant harvest unethically or sacrifice your integrity, you should feel guilty. When you get good gifts from God, an abundant harvest, you should celebrate, not feel guilty about it. Celebrate it. This week, one of my closest friends got news about an abundant harvest. And I want you to know that I called him right away and I just said, you sinner, I can't believe you're enjoying that. No, I drove over to his house. We threw a little party. We hugged and we high-fived because God had blessed in this immeasurably more way. Jesus doesn't condemn the person who gets the abundant harvest in the parable, does he? If you make a ton of money, you don't need to be condemned. But if what you want to do with the good life starts with you and ends with you, you should feel guilty. The problem wasn't that the guy got all of these crops, it's that he had no plan for what he would do if he got more. And here's a question. You can ask this with everything in your life. Do you have a present plan for what you will do with what you receive in the future? Do you have a present plan? So the plan is today. I've got a plan for whatever God wants to give me in the future. If you don't have that, that is the one homework assignment today. Have a present plan for what you will do with whatever God gives you. Doesn't mean the plan can't change, but you need to have a present plan for what you're going to do with that, whatever you receive. This guy in the parable, he doesn't have a plan. So because he thinks it all starts with him and ends with him, when he gets more crops, the only logical thing that comes to his mind is, I've got to build more storage space. What does tearing down barns and building bigger barns look like in your life? I know in downtown San Francisco, we really love all of Jesus' agricultural illustrations. I'm like, what would that look like here? What would I tear down and build? I could give up my studio apartment for a 1-bedroom. And I'm not saying, because I don't think Jesus is saying, hey, you shouldn't have a savings account or retirement or a college fund. I have all of those things, but let me give you a deep conviction that I have. We have too many resources sitting on the sidelines that could be invested in the mission of Jesus. We live in perhaps the wealthiest region of the U.S., and it's one of the least generous regions of the U.S. If you are not generous with less, do not assume you'll become generous when you have more. Do you know how we tend to appease our greed guilt? Let me tell you what we tend to do. We tend to have a, I know what I will do when I have more plan. Anybody? Just me? Oh, when I have more, I'll share with you. I'll be generous. I'll give to the mission of Jesus. I know what I'll do when I have more. And then more comes, and you're like, God, what I meant was, I know what I'll do when I have a lot more, and I get to decide what a lot is. One of the best things you can do is to have a present plan for what you'll do with whatever God gives in the future. What God's going to give me in the future is up to him. But friends, I've already made a plan for what I'm going to do with whatever he gives me. And you're like, oh, Ben, that sounds like you're enslaved. No, I have more freedom than if I didn't live it this way. In this parable, the guy's like, I've got all of this harvest. Let's tear down the current barns, plural, by the way. Let's build bigger barns, plural, by the way. And he's like, I have so much that I can just chill. You know what I can do? I can just eat, drink, and be merry. And it says this phrase. Here's this phrase he said to himself. And I think a lot of us have this as the end game we're after. Listen to what he said to himself. Take life easy. Listen closely. I don't care if you're a Christian, non-Christian. I don't care if you're the wealthiest person or the poorest person in the room. If you think that the end game is to get to a place where you don't have to trust God and you get to live without having any God-given purpose in your life, that is not the good life. That is a small mission focused around you, and it ends in not good stuff. Will you live the good life? Will you live the good life? I want to live the good life. So a few things, I think. Number one is really significant. Find your contentment in Jesus, not in his gifts to you. If you're going to be rich towards God and not just store up things for yourself, find your contentment in Jesus. And what's interesting is that when you have something as what you have to be content, that thing is oftentimes still going to stay out there in front of you. But if Jesus becomes the secret to your contentment, by the way, when Paul writes in Philippians 4, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, everybody knows this wasn't about winning the NBA Finals. Everybody know that? It wasn't about crushing the job interview. Everybody know that? It wasn't about church growth. Do you know what it was about when he's like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me? You know what it's about? He's saying I can find contentment, whatever I have, through Christ who strengthens me, period. If I lose the game, contentment. If I win the game, contentment. If I get the job, contentment. If I don't get the job, contentment. If the church grows, contentment. If it doesn't grow, contentment. Are you with me? I am an ambitious human being. I invite you into that. But my contentment isn't on the line for what I'm hoping to have in my future. Work, family, church, all the things. My contentment is present because Christ is present. And if you can't be content with Jesus, just know that one day that's all you're going to have left. Job said it this way, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return. If you don't have him when you have nothing else, what will you have? Nothing else. See, a lot of you are really at the precipice, at the line where you've got to decide, and you're going to get a chance today, like, am I really going to trust him with my stuff? And am I really going to trust him with my life? Here's what you can't do to be intellectually honest. I'm just going to shoot it straight to you. You can't go, hey, I have no problem giving Jesus my life, but I'll hold my stuff back. That's crazy. You're going to give him your eternity, but not your temporary? With me? Everybody's like, could we move on? Is there like a lighter subject that we're going to cover next week? I think so. Step 3 on the ownership process, I think, is so important. Build the necessary structure. And I'm going to give you the one structure, I've already alluded to it, the one structure that has helped me and thousands of people that I've pastored over the years to be able to come against greed, to overcome greed. It's this one. Make a predecision for your generosity. Make a predecision for your generosity. By the way, can I just give you a pastoral side note since we have extra time today? You need to make a predecision about a lot of decisions. Some of you need to make predecisions about who you will and won't date. You're like, can you go back to talking about money? Some of you need to make predecisions about what you will do and won't do at the office, no matter how many stock shares are at stake. And we need to make a predecision for what we're going to do with our generosity. One of the greatest joys of my life, I would have never thought it would be a joyful endeavor, and so if you don't believe me, I'm totally down with that. One of the greatest joys of my life is the generosity journey that I've been on, and Sean and I have been on, especially together, for the last 25 years. The plans we make at the beginning of each year, how much are we going to give extra this year? How much are we going to give away? And then God blesses, and then we give, and then he blesses, and we give, and he blesses, and we give, and it's pretty wild. And so on your seat, there's a 90-day generosity challenge card. I want to draw your attention there. And again, even if you're not going to do anything with it, just encourage me by looking like you will. There's 5 things on there, and I think there's one that applies to you. And some of you may be thinking, Ben, why a 90-day generosity plan? Like, I thought it takes 21 days to form a habit. It does, but if you're like me, you don't get paid every day. If you do get paid every day, make it a 21-day generosity challenge. And there's just some things on here, and then I'm going to sort of bring us back to greed, and then we'll be done, and we'll respond and have a chance to pray. But I really want you to be thinking, yes, about money and generosity, but I really want you to be thinking about your life. Because let me just shoot straight with you. Some of you need to hear this. Your life is worth way more than your money. Your life in this church is worth way more than your money. Your life to God is worth way more than your money. Your life to yourself should be worth way more than your money. So the first one just says, hey, I'm not doing anything with money. I'm just receiving the generosity of Jesus. I am placing my faith in him. And I think there's many people in this season of our church, attending our church today, in this 1030 room, who today the whole idea for you is to go, I've seen the generosity of Jesus. He did not hold back. He gave it all for me. I received that today. I want to become a Christian. For you, that's all we would encourage you to do if that's where you are and you've never put your faith in Jesus. You've been afraid to put your life in his hands, but today, through his generosity and what he's done for you, it would be a great thing to do. Them moving through these next 4, I'll go through them quickly, but it could be wherever you are. This is about where you are. This is like, by the way, our church is doing great. So this is like, we have this in the teaching schedule long before. It's not like Will's like, hey, Ben, I know you're going to teach on the grace of God, but giving was down last month. Can you just get it going for the people? No. We just know we want you to be free. We want something for you, not from you. Know that. Our church has overwhelming, overflowing generosity, and God's been so gracious. So we're not zero concerned. But we want something for you. The first thing is this, to go from giving nothing to giving something. It's just getting you in the generosity game. It's just getting on the generosity path. It's just starting somewhere. That second one, depending on where you are, could be going from giving something to giving proportionally and consistently. Sometimes when we're in the giving something category, it means we give when we feel like it. We give when we have a $20 bill, either in our back pocket or we have some loose Bitcoin or whatever it is, right? We just give it whenever. But there's no plan to it. It's like we're just, no, we want to move towards being proportional, which is percentage-based giving, and consistent, which means every time I get paid, I'm going to give. And what I love about generosity in the scriptures as a fan of math, any people like fans of math in here? Yeah, keep them up. Can we all agree that math is awesome except for geometry? I mean, I promise, your boy was Algebra 2 Student of the Year and got a bad grade in geometry. And so when my 9th and 10th graders are like, Dad, can you help with geometry? I was like, I cannot. I think that's of the devil, and I think we should just get on to algebra. But what's great about giving proportionally, it's just like I just assign a percentage. So if I get $1,000 this year, okay, I decided a percentage. If it's $1 million this year, I decided that I'm going to give a percentage away. And I'm going to think about creative ways to do that. The next one is to move to tithing, which is giving 10%, like a threshold giving. By the way, it shows up before the law. I think those of us who, as we mature in our faith, I think 10% becomes a baseline for generosity. That's my opinion. That's not a belief or a doctrine we hold as Epic Church, but that is my opinion. And then the last one is moving beyond 10%, which I know sounds crazy, but let me ask you guys one more participation question. How many of you are planners versus like you're more spontaneous? How many of you are planners? All right. How many of you are spontaneous? All right. It makes sense why some of you are here 10 minutes before and some of you come 22 minutes. It's like, oh, let's go to church. It's great. is that article that I wrote coming up, or it's coming up in June? All right, so Lindsay's letting me know. I can't always remember. I've got a great thing coming on my website in June about, I just call it planned spontaneity. And I talk about all of life, but let me just tell you what's been fun for Shauna and I to have planned spontaneity with our generosity. So since the day we've been married, we've given 10% to our local church, and we haven't always worked at a local church. But then in 2011, we began to give a percentage above that 10%. And I sometimes love spreadsheets, so I have an exotic spreadsheet where I can look and see all of the funds that we've given to all of the causes we've given to for over the last 10 years, just with the extra money. And it has been so fun to help people with adoption and go on mission trips. This week, some of you like us, Pastor Will sent us an email about how much we had given to the future building. And it wasn't like, oh, we're so awesome. It was just like, I cannot believe that we've been able to be this generous towards Epic's future home. And it's one of the joys of our lives. And there's been times where we've been tempted to pull back. We do have 4 kids. They are like all in college, going to college. And we just keep going forward. And God keeps showing up. And it's been incredible. I want to finish this message, not with this. I mean, I do want you to think about this. And then on the back, many of you have gone through some kind of generosity commitment like that. We would love to hear your stories, perhaps on the website, or also as people step into a generosity journey, they could really learn and glean a lot from you. And so I want to encourage you to share those. Some of you might think this is a side issue. Some of you might think that greed is like, hey, it's something I shouldn't have, but it probably won't keep me from following Jesus. So I want to ask the question, and then I want to just finish the message with really your faith in Jesus and what greed could have to do with that. So the question that you'll see on the screen is this: will greed really keep you from following Jesus? Or is it just like a side thing that it probably is not good for you, but it won't hold you back? And I just want to tell you, I want to point you to one moment in Matthew 26, verses 14 through 16. And maybe I'll go ahead and just tell you the answer is yes, I think greed will absolutely keep you from following Jesus. Matthew 26, 14 through 16. Matthew writes these words: Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, just listen to the question, what are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you? Just listen to the question. What will you give me? In other words, I wonder if you'll give me a trade value that makes it worth me giving up Jesus. I wonder, hey guys, if I give you if I give you what you want, will you give me what I want most? Because what I want most is, yeah, sure, I was one of the 12. Sure, he's like, come follow me, and along with the other 11 guys, I just like, yeah, and I've been doing it. And sure, I've been in close proximity to him for about 1,000 days. What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you? And then, oh my gosh, the answer. So they start counting out money. They started counting out for him 30 pieces of silver. Come on. What can greed do to you? Verse 16. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. For 30 pieces of silver? Whatever occupies the throne of your heart, I promise you, if it's not Jesus, you will give up Jesus to have the thing you want most. I've seen people walk away from Jesus because of relationships. I've seen people walk away from Jesus because of a certain amount of wealth. I've seen people walk away from Jesus because they were told, hey, by someone like me or maybe like you, a small group leader, hey, you're not going to be able to follow Jesus and continue to live unethically when it comes to your finances. And they're like, well, here you go. You're like, wow, the generosity challenge felt a little bit convicting and high commitment. Now you're telling me, no, this is the whole thing. Greed could keep you from following Jesus forever. If you want another reference, go to Mark 10, look at the rich young ruler. He walked away from Jesus sad. He thought he wanted eternal life. Jesus said, you've got to give this up to have me. He's like, I can't give this up. So he lost out forever. What's at stake if greed doesn't go away in your life? If you have something above Jesus in your heart, in your life, in your budget, I promise you, if that stays the same, you will give Jesus up before you give some of those things up. But how about today we do the reverse of that? How about we give anything up that keeps us from having the life Jesus wants for us? I want you to make two fists with your hands, and band, you can go ahead and come on up and lead us in the prayer. If you're a prayer leader, go ahead and go. People may be ready to pray now. I know, we're just doing it right in the middle because we can. We've got people that are ready to pray. This altar is open, but I want to lead you through just looking at, I want you to keep your eyes open and look at the two fists. The fist, your left-handed fist represents your life. And I want you to just practice opening it, looking at it, closing it, opening, closing it. This is your life. Jesus said if you hold on to your life, you will lose the good life. But he said if you open it, if you let it go for his sake and the sake of the gospel, you will actually find life. I believe there's people in this room today that it may be greed or it could be a whole bunch of other things that have stood in the way. They've been an obstacle between you following Jesus. I just want to know, would you be willing to give your life open-handed to him today and just go like, I'm in. I'm in. And then for the rest of us, the right hand, I want you to think about that as everything money-wise, possession-wise, all of your stuff that you will get between today and the day you breathe your last breath. And I'm holding my fists tightly clenched because this is how I can hold a lot of my stuff. Anybody else? But that just feels like, oh man, what if I were to release it? What if I were just not just to offer my life, but offer everything I've been given by God? What's interesting to me is if you go to the next section of Luke 12, Jesus begins to talk about worry. And let me tell you what a lot of you and we've become convinced of, that if we don't take care of ourselves, no one else will take care of us. That's a lie. Will you offer your life to Jesus today? Will you offer it back to Jesus today? And let me tell you what makes no sense. If he is worthy, then the safest place I can put my life and the safest place I can put all of my stuff, it's in the hands of the Good Shepherd. Would you pray with me? Again, this altar's open. I can only imagine things that people are processing. I can only imagine what you think you've got to hold on to. I can only imagine the scarcity in the room, the fear in the room, the anxiety in the room, and what I'm asking for the Holy Spirit to do in this prayer. I'm going to ask him just to free us. I'm asking him to give us eyes to see. I'm asking him to give us a heart to trust. So Holy Spirit, we just welcome you. We welcome you into this room. We welcome you into our contemplation. We welcome you into our response. We welcome you into weighty and costly commitments we're about to make. We just welcome you. We need your freedom. We need your power. We need your truth. We need your direction. We need your nudging in our lives. We don't want lives that we're holding on to. And so we need your help. Come, Holy Spirit. You can stand as we sing. Offer yourselves. I know you've got to get over people to come and pray, but just like, what would it look like for you to offer not these closed-fisted lives, but these open-handed lives? Let's respond.